This week's episode is brought to us by The Bands I Like Only Charge $18. They are releasing a compilation album called The Sun Will Rise on Better Days. The album will raise money for the charity Trans Lifeline. It is 14 tracks from 16 artists, including ska bands such as Backyard Superheroes, Joker's Republic, Voluntary Hazing, and Leonardo Divorcio with a guest spot by K. Moy. The album comes out on September 2nd on afewgoodrecords.bandcamp.com. It will cost $2, but you can donate more if you want to. The Sun Will Rise on Better Days, out September 2nd.
Pick it up.
It just takes some time. Little girl, you're in the middle of the ride. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be alright. Hey.
Okay, gang, here we go. The In Defense of Ska tour with Mustard Plug, Bucko 9, and Omnigone is hitting the West Coast this September. Tickets are now available. This is a tour you won't want to miss. Aaron Carnes will be there reading new chapters from the expanded edition of his book and answering questions. September 8th, San Diego. The 9th, Las Vegas. The 10th, Mesa, Arizona. The 11th, Garden Grove. The 12th, San Jose, California. The 13th, San Francisco at Bottom of the Hill. 14th, Sacramento. 15th, Eugene, Oregon. 16th, Seattle, Washington. And the 17th in Portland, Oregon. Be there.
Though punk-ska is often used to describe many of the ska bands in the 90s, not many had strong punk roots and a fervent commitment to the punk scene. But Against All Authority were an unbridled punk rock band, one that happened to dabble in some ska as well. Though as you'll learn, they also had deep love for ska and highly respected the genre. Born in South Florida in 1992, Against All Authority became one of the most popular punk ska bands in the late 90s underground scene, and they sang intensely political and meaningful songs. They broke up in 2007 and haven't played since. That is until Fest 2022.
Against All Authority is one of the ska punk bands that really plays the type of ska punk that I like. I just don't feel like they get the recognition they deserve.
They were pretty big when they were a band, but do you think it's because they broke up and then they just haven't played for 15 years? Do you think that's why?
Yeah, I think that there's probably, an older generation of people like me that remember them fondly, but, I just don't think they ever were able to catch with the younger people because they stopped playing. Did you ever see Against All Authority live?
I did not, no.
I saw them at Gilman in 97.
Oh, yeah, they're a good band though. I like them, yeah.
I remember the mosh pit being very violent.
So they are playing their first show in 15 years.
I'm going to go. I'll be there.
Where's the show at?
It's at Fest.
Oh, damn Fest.
Damn Fest. Hook us up. Hook up In Defense of Ska.
Yeah.
You need to have us there next year.
First thing I want to ask about is, so you guys recorded a cover of Ska Sucks in 98, I believe. It was for the Ska Sucks compilation.
Yeah.
So Danny was telling me a little bit about this before. The origin of you guys covering this started with you guys him playing the bass line, I guess, at shows.
I think so, yeah. Like that's something we would always like noodle with too, like practicing and shit,
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. When you heard that song, did you think it was funny? Did you immediately start incorporating that song? Give me a little sense of your relationship to this song.
Yeah, I think we thought we just thought it was really funny when we first heard it. And I liked the bass line, so I used to always fool around with the bass line in practices and stuff, and we just started jamming on it.
And that's also to say we were fans of Propaganda as well. Like that one album that they had, the first album that they had out was a great album. And, like when you're starting off in a band and all these other bands are coming out, you like learn some of their stuff and then it's like, oh shit, they got a ska song. So we would play it. And I think we did a pretty good version of it,
Yeah, I like the version you recorded. I think it's a good version.
I think I heard your guys' version first.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't think that anybody in the band thinks that ska really sucks.
No, you guys like
yeah.
ska?
We all love ska. Obviously. We're on a ska podcast, and we play a lot of ska in our music. But maybe, I don't know. I think that's so far that's kind of accurate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the way I remember it, especially being a ska fan and a ska musician in the '90s, was that most of us like thought the song was funny and kind of embraced it. We're just like, yeah, like not like necessarily offended by it, but just more like, oh yeah, I like this song and I'll play this song. It's kind of like a weird way to like, I don't know, like reclaim it, rather than it being like a source of being like feeling like being made fun of, more just like taking that song and making it their own. I mean, you guys played the bass line and you recorded the song, so I'm sure you felt some amount of that.
Well, definitely. And, the lyrics kind of went along with what was going on at the time within punk rock, not necessarily the ska scene. You had a lot of bands that were, selling out. That was like a big thing at the time. Like, these bands that were like getting on MTV and signing these major label deals and stuff. And there was a handful of bands that were still like, like, hey, let's keep this independent. Let's not, take this over to the mainstream and turn it into something that it's not. Let's keep it weird. Let's keep it for the weirdos, So the lyrics went along with that.
Also, I didn't feel like offended by the song being a ska fan, because, when you're in punk rock, you're used to like, having people make fun of you at school, whatnot. Punk back then wasn't like punk now, So, like, I felt no offense with the song. It's an interesting topic that you bring it up, because now I'm just trying to wrap my head around, the whole song here.
This is going to sound weird being the drummer. I don't think I've ever heard the AAA version of that, which is kind of crazy.
Really?
I don't think I didn't track that with you guys. No. And I don't even think I've ever heard it before.
Who tracked drums for that?
It must have been Chris King that did the drums.
Maybe. But
Maybe
I'll take royalties for it though. That's fine.
Shit. I know we contacted Propaganda, right? Didn't we ask hey,
green light.
Yeah.
Oh, they did? You asked them, really? You're like, hey, is it cool if we record this?
Yeah, I think we reached out somehow through an email.
Through Hopeless. Lewis, I think Lewis knew them. So.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I think it's interesting. Like, this is their only ska song. And like, it's a good song. And I think the fact that you could go play the bass line at a show and not play the song, just kind of play the bass line, and everyone knows what you're doing. I think that speaks a lot to how recognizable that song is.
Yeah, definitely. It was funny. You play that at a ska show and people kind of look over at you like, what?
Also, we had an interesting relationship, because when we started playing, we were too punk for the ska bands, okay? And we were too ska for the punk bands. I don't know if that makes sense, but so of course we're like, I think that was like a really good song for us to play, because we kind of felt it like, hey, what, we're too punk for you ska kids, or that's just too hard for you.
One of the reasons, like, I remember also we had played this show. Joe, do you remember this show we played with? Like, it was like a ska festival, and all of our South Florida friends, we all traveled up to, like, I think it was like above Orlando.
Yeah.
But Magadog played, and
yes, it was Magadog. Mustard Plug played.
Yeah, it was like
the Selector.
Tons of ska
Bim
bands.
Scala Bim.
Yeah, and then us, and it's like we kind of felt like everybody was wearing suits.
They were like who the fuck are these guys?
Yeah, everybody was wearing suits, and we had like mohawks and stuff. And I think, that kind of prompted me to want to record that song. I was just like, that was in 94. Yes, I think so. Yeah, it was before we ever started.
Who would remember is what's his name from Mustard Plug?
Dave.
Yeah, Dave will know.
I've got the flyer for that show, so it's
Dave, if you're listening,
Dave has a flyer.
Please Yeah, please post the flyer for the show. Let's talk a little bit about the origins of the band. So before the band starts, I know Danny, you're from Cutler Ridge. That's where you're from?
Yeah, South Miami.
So that's Cutler Ridge is South Miami?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, Cutler Ridge is now called Cutler Bay, and it's pretty far south. It's just before you start getting into the farmlands and down into the Keys. And Danny lived in Princeton, which went Cutler Ridge. The next town was Gould's, and then after that is Princeton.
And then you're getting down into like Naranja and Homestead after that.
Yeah, then you're down into the Keys. So we're pretty far south.
And so you're from the same area, Joe?
Yes, I was a little bit, kind of like in the same area, but maybe just like, I'd say like 5 miles north of that. I lived in the Perrine area.
Yeah, back then we used to always say that geographically we were the southernmost punk rock band in the continental United States.
Yeah, we used to claim that for ourselves.
I think you can make that claim.
Yeah, we used to fly that flag. But yeah, because if you look at the map, we're at the tip of the dip, at the bottom of Florida. So and if you look across, we're lower than Brownsville, Texas, I think, or just parallel. Because if you look at the map of the United States, so we're pretty south. It's hot down here.
Yeah.
So in the mid late 80s, early 90s, when you guys were going to punk shows, the venue that you went to was the Cameo Theater.
Yeah, that was our church, man. That was like back when Miami Beach was just nothing but abandoned buildings, hotels. Like, we'd all go and party in the hotels, drink bottles of Mad Dog, because being 14, 15 years old, that was like we had the run of that place. That's before all the glitz and glamour moved down there. It was, like I said, abandoned buildings, old people, and homeless people.
Yep. And
we basically had the run of the town. I'm about an hour north of those guys. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. But it seemed like every weekend we would go down to the Cameo. We'd pile 8 guys in my buddy Chevy Nova and just cruise down there, and just like once, twice a week sometimes. For years.
Yeah, we had the best shows going on in the 80s. We saw, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Descendants, Dead Kennedys. Like every weekend, it was just a different show. The Descendants, just nonstop.
Yeah, it's great.
So obviously the punk bands came through. Did normal bands like come through, or was it sort of off the grid?
No, normal bands meaning like Ozzy and shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep in mind Fort Lauderdale, especially like in the 80s, was huge. Like the spring break was like, it was a sea of people down there. Then they had to basically raise the drinking age because kids were getting wasted and falling off balconies. That's when the drinking age was 18. So they had to raise the drinking age to 21. So that deterred a lot of college kids from coming down there. But yeah, we had tons of shows down there, all calibers.
So what was the Cameo Theater? Was it like an old movie theater?
Yeah, an old theater from the 20s.
It was an old movie theater. I actually grew up on South Beach. Like if you watch the beginning of Scarface, where the whole chainsaw scene, like I grew up right in that neighborhood, and the Cameo Theater was kind of right down the street from there. It's real close to the shore where the beach was, and my elementary school is a school right across from the Cameo Theater. And before there were punk shows there, I used to go on field trips. Like I saw Karate Kid and E.T. at the Cameo Theater. So it was like it used to be an old theater there,
Yeah, it's an old Art Deco building. It's really cool.
And then they just started to play. Actually, you can see if you watch Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, the club scene where they're watching the metal band.
Oh, Cannibal Corpse?
That's the Cameo Theater.
Oh, wow, okay.
And there's like, if you watch that film, they actually, they filmed it at the Cameo Theater, and right next door there's like these old Art Deco apartment buildings where he lives and stuff, and like that kind of gives you the sense of like what South Beach looked like. Well, what they call South Beach, we just called it Miami Beach.
Miami Beach. Well, shout out to Richard Shelter. He was the one who basically brought all the punk bands down there. Pre-Cameo, he had a place called Flynn's, and that's where like a lot of again, Black Flag, Minuteman, all these bands would come down there and play. COCDRI. And then I guess something happened with that club. And then he started talking to the owners of the Cameo. He's like, hey, they weren't doing anything. The movies weren't making any money. It was just like maybe 3 people go and watch the movies there. And he talked the guy into letting him lease out the, things for punk shows. And that's how that kind of, we pack 1,500 people in there for for shows. It was great.
And to bring this back to ska, since this is a ska podcast, I saw a Fishbone at the Cameo.
Yeah.
And that shit blew me away, man. They were so awesome.
Yeah, they were amazing.
I was a kid, and I was like, holy shit, look at this fucking band. I was just like, I couldn't, I don't, there's no words, man.
Was that kind of the introduction to ska for you?
Nah, I think the first band I heard that I really got into that had the ska vibe was definitely Operation Ivy.
Yeah.
And listening to the Bad Brains. I think the Bad Brains before that, where they do like their reggae breakdowns and so forth. And growing up where I did and, down south, there's a big Caribbean culture. You have a lot of Cubans. My mother's from Cuba. We have Jamaicans, Puerto Ricans. So, you got that like upbeat vibe in a lot of the music. So it was like we were just surrounded with it. So I kind of grew up listening to a lot of that merengue and stuff like that and salsa.
Nice.
And sometimes I feel like I try to incorporate that into like my picking style sometimes.
But like hearing it through the lens of punk rock, the Bad Brains and Operation Ivy was a new experience.
Yeah. And, also bands like the Subhumans had that skank in their music too, and of course,
even the Clash.
Yeah. And the Clash 100%. And, then of course, Subhumans went on to become, Culture Shock. And, Citizen Fish.
Yeah, Citizen Fish.
Which are fucking incredible bands as well.
Yeah.
I think my intro was pre that because it was when Madness came out, or not when they came out, but when MTV started. They would play Madness videos.
Yeah,
and it wasn't like punk at all, but it had that definitely ska element to it.
Yeah. They were on the Young Ones, first time I saw them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they played. I want to say they played Baggy Trousers, if I'm not mistaken, on the Young Ones.
Yeah.
Or was it House of Fun? I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But I do remember. I can remember them on Young Ones.
Yeah.
A big correlation with punk, reggae, and ska. They were always kind of attached to each other in the early years.
So I know, Danny, before Against All 30, you had a band called Grover Snatch.
Yes.
Punk rock band.
Yeah, it was punk rock, but had some funky vibes to it.
Yeah, but you guys Danny won't say it, but he's a fucking incredible funk bass player. You guys don't know about that shit.
Yeah,
he could slap.
You like to slap some bass?
He could slap the bass like nobody knows, man. I'm telling you right now.
Slap that bass.
It's incredible.
Yeah, anybody. I think if you're a bass player, funk and reggae. I mean, for me, it was just something that kind of came together because it's like it's the groove. Bass players need to feel that groove. It's fun to play.
Did you guys have bands before? Like Joe, did you have anything before Against All Authority?
I had like, neighborhood bands that I would play with my friends and shit, like we never played a show or anything. And then I remember, and we all knew each other, through skating, like I had a half pipe in my backyard. And I think the first time I met Danny, like I didn't know him. I think he like broke into my backyard and skated my ramp and shit. And then when I got home, he was like standing out in the street with his friends, like, "Hey, can we skate your ramp?" But we would see each other around, and we all knew we had the same circle of friends because the punks were few and far between, especially down south where we grew up. And so my friend Milan, which was actually the first drummer for Against All Authority, he was like, "Hey man, my friend Danny wants to start a band, and give him a call." We talked about it, and I think we were like, "Man, we need to start a band that's like Operation Ivy and the Subhumans, and shit like
I think
that.
you were actually going to play for Grover Snatch, weren't you? Like
I think maybe so.
after Hurricane Andrew, that's what I think we initially talked about you taking over for Greg after Hurricane Andrew because he moved away.
Yeah.
And then I was just bored with that whole scene, and I was just like, I don't really want to play this music anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about Hurricane Andrew, because I know that's a kind of an important part of the story of the band. So 1992, Hurricane Andrew comes in and tell us kind of what happens. It's a really pretty devastating hurricane for your particular area, right?
It was horrible, man. It looked like a bomb went off.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend at the time and we were in a small house, and we said goodbye to each other. We thought we were dead. We didn't think we were going to make it through the storm. It was like 8 hours of a train running through your house. It was that bad. It
sounded, the way I describe it, it sounds like a train full of demons screaming at you for 8 hours. I thought we were going to die. I took a shit when I saw my mother smacking the shit out of her older sister because her older sister was freaked out. My aunt, she wanted to run outside. So my mom was doing one of those in the movies where they slap you, get a hold of yourself, like that kind of thing. And she was smacking her in her face, kind of just hey, you're not going out there. There's a fucking hurricane right now. So it was pretty intense. And then afterwards, the aftermath was the worst part because it was a total devastation.
Mm-hmm.
No power for I would say almost 4 months.
Yeah.
Was it the worst hurricane that have you experienced, including up to the present?
Oh,
yes.
100%. Yeah. I think on record, it's the strongest one. Yeah.
I mean, you had the one that hit New Orleans, but that was, the levees broke and the water came flooding in. We're talking about just wind, nonstop wind hitting you here.
Yeah. We didn't have that kind of flooding. Because we do have the Everglades swamp that's just right along us, but yeah, it took a long time to rebuild, and that's kind of how we started the band. We would we had no electricity, so we would jam shit out acoustically.
I had an acoustic bass.
Yeah,
Joe had an acoustic guitar, and Milan, our first drummer, I used to have this big conga drum that I got at a garage sale, and he would play the conga, and we would just fool around.
Yeah,
we had this plan that we were going to go down to Key West and play Fugazi songs and Operation Ivy songs on the pier and make some money, busk for money. But
yeah,
we never did it.
We smoked too much weed.
So the storm hits, and there's no power for 6 months. And so, when did you guys decide to start this band? Was it after the storm?
Yeah, pretty much right after the storm.
Was it because of this, people leaving Grover Snatch, leaving town?
For me, yeah. Grover Snatch was an active band. We were playing all over the place. And once our guitarist left, I think, as I remember it, Joe was going to be he was going to replace him. And we had one practice. And we were playing the songs, and I just wasn't into it. I was like, I don't want to play this stuff anymore. And then we just... Joe and I had a conversation, and we were like, man, let's do some stuff that we really like, because the other guys in the band weren't really into Operation Ivy or Fugazi or anything like that. They were listening to other stuff. So we were like, let's do something that we really want to do. And we started writing some songs.
I see. And so this process begins as an acoustic project out of necessity, with there being no... What was it like, by the way, to live for 6 months with no electricity?
It was rough, man. It was rough. I had a canal in my backyard. So, all day we'd kind of work on my dad's house, trying to get the house, put a roof back on it, tarp everything down. We had to pull all the drywall down, all the insulation out, drag it out onto the street. It was, because it was a total loss. The roof came off the house. And then we would just go and jump in the canal. Soap up, take a bath in the canal.
It seemed like we were covered in sweat all the time. It was just really hot, mosquitoes. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, because there were no windows on the house. They all got smashed out. I was awoken to the crawling of palmetto bugs on me and stuff like that. Which, if you guys don't know, those are those big roaches that are huge with wings.
Oh yeah.
So it was just we had to stand in line for food and stuff like that. The military would walk up and down the street at night. My aunt would tell us like, oh man, this is what Cuba was like, when we were living there. It was just like kind of like a war zone. Couldn't even really recognize your own neighborhood.
It was crazy. I used to live down the street from this place called Monkey Jungle. That was like a family attraction place that had all these monkeys. And one day the army came to my house and they asked me, they were like, do you have a gun? And I was like, yeah, I've got a gun. They were like, all right, if you see any monkeys, you have to shoot them on sight. And I was like, no, I'm not. Are you kidding me? I'm not fucking shooting a monkey. And they were like, no, it's not. People think that they're from Monkey Jungle, but they're not. They're from there's a AIDS testing HIV laboratory over here, and the monkeys got out.
What?
And yeah. So I had neighbors, and the monkeys came up to their fence, and the monkeys were throwing shit at their houses, But luckily, I never saw them. I never saw any of the monkeys and stuff. But my neighbor's house was attacked by them. So,
why hasn't someone written a zombie movie that starts off in Miami? During that time, that's just like a great scenario.
I don't know if I could shoot monkeys, even if they were like crazy laboratory monkeys.
I don't know though. When they're attacking your house,
Yeah, I mean maybe.
yeah. If they got you cornered, you got to do what you have to do, I guess.
Monkey Jungle is still there.
Monkey Jungle is there, yeah.
Yeah, it's on 216th Street. I passed it today.
Oh, but you know what? Just to go back a second, like you were asking about bands that we were in before, and the Cameo Theater. Like I used to go see Spikey's band back in the 80s. Spikey was like played for all kinds of bands back in the 80s, punk bands in the 80s. There was this band Nuclear. Spike, did you play in any other bands beside Nuclear Beer before Nuclear Beer? Was that your first band?
No, I had a like a neighborhood band with a couple of the guys, and then my first punk band was called Blatant View. We actually had one of the dudes from the band Life Sentence came down to Florida for a little bit.
Yeah,
and he was singing for us for a little bit. So yeah, I've done a lot of stuff, but Nuclear Beer was probably my first. Well, I take that back because the other band before that we played with Wasted Youth. We did a lot of shows, but Nuclear Beer, yeah, we got to play the Cameo a couple of times, open up for Blast, and some other bands, and it was And then I didn't meet these guys till was it 96, I believe.
Yeah,
that's when I first met you guys, but we can get there when we get there, I guess.
So when you and Joe, was it? So you and Joe, and who else was it, Danny, for the initial?
For the initial, it was me and Joe and a guy named Milan, and we were all just skateboard friends. And then Joe said, Joe knew another kid, skinhead guy named Joey Jukes, and he was really into ska.
Yeah, we went to high school together.
Yeah, and he was into ska we were all into like punk rock. And we liked Operation Ivy and The Clash, Bad Brains, stuff like that, so like we had like that aspect going on. But this guy was like full on, Toasters, Specials, Desmond Decker, he turned us on to like a lot of that stuff. But he was our trumpet player. So on our very first 7-inch, he was the trumpet player for that. But Milan didn't last as our drummer. He only kind of started out with us. I think he played one show with us, our first show, which was Gallery of the Unknown Artists down on South Beach. And then after that, he really didn't want to do it anymore. So that's when we met Chris King.
Now, were you against All Authority right away, or did that come later?
When we started playing out, that was our band.
Were there any other band names that you guys thought of? I mean, it's a great band name.
There were some horrible names.
Yeah, well, let's hear them.
Yeah, we want to hear them.
I mean, I know I can think of two off like the top of my head. One was called, so Joe came up with this one. I totally vetoed it right away. But Ska Na Na. And I can remember Joe trying to sell it to me too. He's like, because it's like ska but punk, it's ska, but na it's not. Like
sha na na.
Like sha na na. And I was just like, I don't know. So and then I said, like, what about skaka?
Yeah.
And then we were just like, we all just kind of agreed. We're like, we're not going to be in a band that has ska in the name of the band.
Good call.
Like,
yeah. So there's an alternative universe where "Destroy What Destroys You" comes out, and it's by a band called Ska Na Na.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, if you think about it now, that's kind of like a cool name. I could see a band starting right now and name that.
We'll give that to whoever wants to start a band with that. You can have that. There it is.
Somebody Start a band called Ska. No, no.
Skaka.
Skaka is also free.
Yeah.
No, I think Danny was telling me before that there was no place to play really, and that you guys started putting on your own shows.
Oh yeah, we started we went to a club that was in Coconut Grove, and they used to show like the Rocky Horror Picture Show and stuff like that, and they would play like it was like a new wave dance club at night.
The Kitchen Club.
So the Kitchen Club, and we went there and we spoke to a guy. I think his name was Aldo, and we were like, "Hey, trying to be like we're promoters, man, and we, can we bring some bands down?" And like he gave us 3 Fridays in a row before the club would open, and we threw these like all ages shows with all our friends' bands. We were friends with bands down here called like the Crumbs was a band from down here. They were on Lookout Records. Cavity, which is like they're pretty well known in the doomcore scene.
Los Canadians.
What other bands? Los Canadians.
Yeah. Darvis Brown and the Smoke Asses.
Yeah, we had a lot of cool bands. Yeah, Hudson. So anyways, we threw these shows, man, and like the line was down the block. Like just ask. I still talk to people now that talk about that time, and they're like, "Man, I remember being a kid and it was like my first show and stuff like that," and it's just it really kind of helped boost the scene because there was like not that many places to play or have all ages shows.
Yeah, at that time there was none. Like the Cameo had closed because they couldn't get insurance. Someone got hurt there.
This was because of the hurricane?
No, this was after the hurricane. They didn't close it because of the hurricane. There was an accident at the Cameo. Someone broke their neck or something.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Diving off the stage, and then they couldn't get insurance, and there was a lawsuit, and they decided not to do shows there anymore or something. I'm not sure the exact particulars, but
and then that scene kind of like it supercharged the scene, and a lot of bands started forming.
Yeah.
A lot of younger kids, and then there was a club just maybe a mile down the street called Cheers, which was like a lesbian club, and we were friends with the owner. Her name was actually Gay, was her name, and she she just started having shows there.
Yeah.
And that's when a lot of bands started coming down. I'm talking about like a lot of touring bands would play at Cheers. Less Than Jake would play there. We'd play there with them. We'd play with, I think Blink-182 played there. A lot of different punk bands from all over would come and end up there.
And she originally thought that we were in like competition with her. She was like, "Hey, I think I asked her. I was like, "Hey, can we play a show?" And she was like, "Oh, I didn't think you guys would want to." And I was like, "Why not?" And she's like, "Oh, I thought because we're doing shows and you're doing shows." And I'm like, "Well, shit, I don't want to do shows. We had to do shows. I think they started doing shows because they saw how it was going for us. We were getting all these kids and stuff, but Joe and I, it was a big strain for us. Like I'd work all day and then run over and had to rent a PA, and Joe and I would go there and set up a PA, and then we had to get the bands in, and we're working the sound. We had never worked sound before, and then we had to return all the equipment, and so we didn't really want to do it. We just did it out of necessity.
Yeah, we're like, please have shows. This is great.
During this era, the Kitchen Club, Cheers, earlier era, before you guys really started getting out on tour, were there other bands in your scene that had any ska elements, or were you like it?
There was one band. They were called Bingo Mutt.
Bingo Mutt was in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
What did they sound like?
Oh man.
Well, I'll say that. Well, the singer had a real gruff voice, almost like Dickie Barrett style, and they were like this, just like psycho, like ska, like really up, real energetic.
They released a 7-inch.
Yeah, if you could ever check it out, listen to it because it's a great 7-inch.
It's good, man.
I'm telling you. I really liked them. I thought they were a great fucking band. Bingo
They were
Mutt.
great.
We played with them as well.
I remember playing with them at like an apartment complex, like at a pavilion at an apartment complex one time. And I remember the singer took his shirt off to change shirts, and his whole back was a whole entire like checkerboard, like tattoo. yeah. That guy, he was fucking in it, doing it. He was full on.
That's how you show
Yeah.
commitment.
Yeah, man.
Yes. And then there was King 7. What is
King
it?
7 and the Soul Sonics.
And the Soul Sonics.
And the Drive Step Bunch. But they were all the same people, right? Like that was all.
There were some familiar. There were kind of some guys were in that
Yeah.
both bands, you know. But yeah, the Jive Step Bunch
Drive Step Bunch were
was
awesome.
before.
Yeah.
We used to play with them a lot.
Yeah.
They were from down here as well. They were a great band, Jive Step Bunch.
So your first 7-inch, your first release is the
Above the Law.
Above the Law, yes, and that's self-released.
That was released on Far Out Records. So initially, it was going to be a self-release. Initially, that's what it was going to. We were going to just release it ourselves.
Yeah, let's take a step back and talk about that. So, before you guys recorded anything or released anything, you were thinking, well, we're just going to start our own label, and
Right.
And I believe you reached out to Ian Mackay and asked him, hey, how do you do this? How do you start a label?
Yeah, I sent them a letter, and then they sent me back this little booklet that was called Simple Machines, and it was kind of like a book your own fucking life deal. It gave you every contact that you would need to start a record label: distributors, record plants, pressing plants for the CD, the 7-inch covers, just like all kinds of stuff. So I just I said I'm going to start a record label, and then we'll do the 7-inch, but at that same time, it's when we were playing those shows at the Kitchen Club, and Tim Farout from Far Out Records, he was up in Fort Lauderdale. He had a record store, and he had started a record label. So he had come out to the show, and he was just like, "God, I want to put out your record." So, and that was kind of a thing where we were kind of like, well, we have all these songs, and we don't really have the money to do it ourselves, and he wants to do it, and he's from Florida with a DIY label. Let's just go ahead and work with him.
So yeah, is it a similar thing to the booking the shows? Like you were wanting to start a label out of necessity, or did you actually want to be involved in that level?
Yeah, I wanted to do a label.
You did want to do a label, but there was the financial elements.
Yeah, but back then, there was a whole different kind of take on punk. Punk wasn't just like, oh, I listen to punk, I'm a punk. Like if you were a punk rocker, if you wanted to be like in the scene, you had to be an active member of the scene. At least in Miami, you had to be in a band, you had to be putting on shows, passing out flyers, you had to just be an active participant in the scene to really, be a part of the scene. It wasn't just about showing up to shows and buying a T-shirt and going home. It's like we like, I guess, Fugazi kind of set that standard, like Minor Threat, like the Discord scene and Gilman Street, those were the people that we kind of looked up to, and they were doing things. They were actively doing things. So we were just, we were like, man, I want to do something. Let's do something positive and get this thing moving forward. No one else was doing it for us. No one was coming up to us and asking us if we wanted to play shows anywhere.
Sure. And I imagine too, being a band in South Florida, it probably felt like you were like a million miles away from everything, and even the well-known indie labels.
Yeah, that's a big factor. I mean, look at it now. A lot of bands don't tour all the way down to the Miami area because just, you got to go, 6 to 7 hours down into the peninsula and then back up,
Yeah, it's a 12-hour round trip.
That's how when we went, we're not there yet, but when we went on our first tour, we're like, okay, we left Florida, so we might as well circle the whole United States. We're out here.
Yeah, you make that first trek, yeah.
It's not like being a band in the Midwest that's like, hey, let's shoot out to the West Coast for, a couple weeks. Yeah. Now let's go to the East Coast. We're like,
yeah, whenever we went on tour, it was like a 6-week thing because we just did the whole circle,
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, like growing up in the Bay Area felt similar. I mean, in the Bay Area, there was like 4 or 5 places you can play that are like quote unquote different markets. But to leave the Bay Area, it's like, okay, 6-7 hours to LA or Vegas or Portland. So it kind of feels that way here too, to some degree. Like you have to kind of get past the initial long stretch to start doing stuff. But I'm sure like in Florida, way more than it is here.
Well, I will say that all of the little cities around here, like Orlando and St. Pete and, West Palm Beach, like everybody had a really strong scene. So, we were far away from everybody, but we could drive into different cities and have good shows too. Vero Beach had a place called the Schoolhouse. We had all kinds of cool stuff.
So Far Out Records, did he have any other? Had he released anything before? Or were you the?
He did a couple. He did like a 7-inch from this band Hudson
Mhm.
that Spike played for too. That's how we met Spike. And
Yeah, there are a lot of good bands on
a
there.
band called the One Eyed Kings. I think we might have been. Were we the third 7-inch on that label?
I don't know. Bingo Mutt was on there.
Okay, so I think we were the fourth 7-inch.
The Crumbs was on there. Discount.
Yeah.
Who else was on there? A lot of bands. Oh, the Belltones.
Belltones.
They were a really good band. If you're into Oi, the Belltones.
Tell me a little bit about those early songs that are on that 7-inch. I know, Danny, you were telling me that is like a lot of songs from your personal life, just kind of what you were experiencing as a young punk.
Right. So like Above the Law was written after an encounter I had in Peacock Park, which is in Coconut Grove, where some friends and I were out at Peacock Park late at night. And we were going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show, in fact. And we had someone, went to the gas station, 7-Eleven, and had someone buy us some beer, and we went out to the farthest corners of this park that's like right on the bay. No one can see us. And we cracked open some beers, and we were just kind of sitting on his picnic table, drinking some beers. This was 1985, I think. 1980. Yeah, it had to been 1985. And I could see someone walking towards us through the park. And I noticed when he got behind like a street, like the silhouette, I could tell that he had a gun on his waist and stuff. And I was like, "Hey man, the cops are coming." And everybody was like, "No, you're just being paranoid," And I'm like, "Nope, I can see one coming." So the cop finally came up to us, and then another cop came, and they started talking to each other, and then they had us. They started kind of roughing us up a little bit. And they were like, I want to see asses and elbows, and they had us up on the table, pushing us around. And then one of the cops reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of weed and threw it on the table. And he said, "We got you guys with possession." And we didn't have any weed. We were like, "Nah, what are you talking about?" And they were like, "Yep, that's your weed. We got you in possession. You guys are all going down." And it was this crazy thing. We were all like, "Oh shit, we're shitting bricks." And then all of a sudden, this other cop, who I guess was their superior, came walking up. And when they saw him, the cop that threw the weed down picked up the weed and stuffed it back into his pocket. And the cop was like, "What's going on here?" And they're like, "Oh, we caught these guys over here drinking this, drinking beer." And that the superior was like, "All right, you guys have 10 seconds to pour all this beer out and get the hell out of the park. And if I see you again here, I'm going to arrest you." So we all poured the beer out and hauled ass. But yeah, that was the inspiration for Above the Law song.
Wow. Yeah. Was that common? That kind of the police and their attitude towards punks?
Oh, for sure. Especially back in the 80s, it was dangerous. They didn't know what the hell was going on. There wasn't goth and all that stuff around. It's if you had a mohawk, someone wanted to kick your ass because you had a mohawk.
You had a target.
Destroy What Destroys You. You go to record that next. Is your first tour before or after that?
After Destroy What Destroys You.
Okay. So let's talk about Destroy What Destroys You. So I guess you're happy with the Far Out 7-inch release, and he says, "Let's do a full length," or how does the next conversation go?
Yeah, well, he actually he ended up joining the band. We were playing a show one night on South Beach, and he showed up, and we had added a saxophone player by that time, so we had the trumpet and the sax player, and then he's brought up the fact that he played trombone, and we were like, "Well, yeah, man, like you're cool. Let's grab the horn, come on in,
Join the band."
Yeah, exactly. So that's so he became a band member, and we had a ton of songs at this time. Joe and I were just writing songs left and right, and so we ended up going into the studio and recording for the full length.
Now the studio was called Tapeworm over by the airport. Yeah, tell us about that studio.
Tapeworm.
Oh my gosh, that was like. I'll tell you one thing. The very first 7-inch that we recorded is the same tape machine that Bob Marley used to record Buffalo Soldier.
Oh, that's cool.
That was the lineage of that recording device. But it was just this little tiny warehouse that and I remember we had some issues the first time we went there. Remember, like Joe, we went there and he didn't show up twice.
Yeah, this was Jeremy Dubois. The sound engineer that he was recording all the bands down here. He was a kid as well, and just kind of getting started. And I remember going there. It was a warehouse on a desolate road there, in North Miami Beach, and that's kind of where we figured out all these songs, man.
Yeah.
We did Destroy What Destroys You, and he recorded a lot of the local bands there. And
I remember he didn't show up like for the 2 days in a row. Like we were there hanging out waiting, and the second day I found like a steak knife on the ground. Remember that, Joe?
yeah,
I found a steak knife, so he wrote this note, and I just wrote this note,
stuck it to the
and
door.
I was like, "We were here, you weren't." And I took the knife and stuck it in the door, and we left him like a message. And then he called us that night, and he's like, "I'll be there." So be there tomorrow, promise.
So the Destroy What Destroys You, tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind the title and the song itself.
So the title for that album came out of it's something I kind of got from the Anarchist Cookbook. In the forward of the Anarchist Cookbook, there is a French quote, I believe, and it says something about can't remember what the exact quote was, but it was something along the lines of, destroying the things that destroy you, like make something about making things kaput, or something. And I just kind of like translated that a little bit and it's like, oh, that's cool, and use that. Destroy what destroys you.
Did it feel like a personal / political message to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, we knew from the get-go what we kind of wanted to accomplish with the band, and lyrically, and that just kind of fit right in with where we were going.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you were hoping to accomplish lyrically with the band.
Well, I know for me personally, like, people like listening to bands like Jello Biafra, like the Dead Kennedys and stuff, like that was the kind of stuff that kind of really moved me, like made me stop and think. I was never really inspired by teachers or my elders or anything, but to like learn anything, just kind of wanted to coast through and ride my skateboard. But I kind of did a little bit of research on stuff when the Dead Kennedys were singing about things. I wanted to know a little bit more about it, and that just kind of intrigued me. And then when Operation Ivy came out, like their lyrics were just so insightful, and they weren't like overtly political, but they had these social commentary that it was just they just really spoke to me, and I was just, Joe and I would have these discussions about it, about like what we wanted to do. And we kind of wanted to do something that was along like the lines of like the Dead Kennedys, the reggae stuff that the Clash was doing, Operation Ivy. We kind of wanted to mix all that together, but we just wanted to have an impact on like, on the scene, on the younger kids coming up, give them what like, the Dead Kennedys gave us.
Music with a meaning.
Yeah, because in the 80s and 90s, if you were into underground punk rock or ska, well, a lot of times like what the bands talked about were causing you to question the larger cultural narrative in a way that maybe you didn't, and maybe no other voice around you was. And I don't know if that's still the same for people, but I can remember feeling that way as a kid in the 90s, getting into this music, how it's like you're not really hearing some of these thoughts or some of these ways of questioning elsewhere.
Right.
So I can see like the value in looking at the lyrics that your band is putting out there in your music.
Yeah, definitely. I remember listening to the Subhumans, the EPLP, and just like every song was just so like the stuff that they were singing about was just so cool. Just eye opening.
Same with Bad Religion. He always talked about things, or still does rather. It's just like, wake the fuck up, people. Like, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do.
Yeah. It's just something a little bit deeper than singing about, alcohol and cocaine,
Tell me a little bit about the song No Reason, the inspiration behind that.
So that was kind of, growing up, my dad was always listening to Rush Limbaugh, and, I had to listen to that shit all the time. It was right, in my bedroom, like right next to his office is right next to my bedroom. So I always had to listen to that. And, his views on race really sucked. And that was just kind of like, a song for him. Like I knew he never, like my parents never actually went to go see my band Grover Snatch or, anything like that. They never listened to my music or anything like that. So it was just kind of like a thing, because I knew other kids were going through the same thing. Like I wanted, I wanted to just say, like, you don't have to follow like all that bullshit. If someone's trying to teach you that shit, if someone's just saying those words in front of you and treating people badly, like, and they're your family member, you don't have to just go along with that. Like there's a time when you have to get, you're old enough and you can stand up and confront them. And that's what I did, and we used to argue about it all the time. And, I just ended up writing a song about that. It was just kind of like no reason, was just, I never saw the reason for the stuff that he would say about people. And yeah.
Did you feel like you ever made any progress with him in these conversations?
Oh no, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's not funny, but it's funny. It's just that stuff is just so brainwashing, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like with politics. It's like you want to try to explain things to people, your side to people, but there's nothing that they're going to say that's going to make me change my mind. And I guess that's the same thing with them. There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to make them change their mind.
I would argue it's different for people like us that grew up in those households and then had their own, whether it's through punk rock or through whatever ideas. Therefore, these weren't necessarily ideas adopted. They're ideas that we chose.
Right.
So if we feel like those people can't change our mind, it's because we've already changed our mind away from them.
Yeah.
The cover, tell me a little bit about the cover and the back cover specifically too of Destroy What Destroys You.
So Omar Angulo was this punk rock kid that was just, at every show, but his artwork was just this amazing. To this day, he just, it's still that same style, the black and white pen art. And it's just something that he came up to it with when, he was listening to our music. He would come out to the shows and stuff. We asked him if he would draw something, and he did that first 7-inch, and then he did Destroy What Destroys You. And
he did the first 7-inch kind of like a comic strip.
Yeah.
It reads into the back cover. And he did the cover for us, and we were just like, man, we were blown away. He was such a great artist. He still is. He's still active and in the scene, and he still does a lot of stuff.
So when you guys head out on tour for the first time?
Was that 96, Joe, or 95? 95.
It was 95 was our first tour. We set off in a 1968, a green 1968 school bus.
Bluebird school bus. We watched Another State of Mind one too many times.
Yeah. It was gutted out, and it was already built inside.
Yeah, they kind of
like a makeshift
camper,
RV-ish.
like an RV. There's some bunk beds in there.
And we pretty much broke down maybe, like, I'd say at least 10 times around the United States in that thing.
We broke down before, like on our way out of town, like when we were like, all right, we're going on a tour. Like that night we had to cancel the show because we broke down.
Yeah. We did have a crew with us. We had the driver was Brad Helton, and he was a certified mechanic. Mm-hmm. And this fucking guy fixed this bus all over the United States with hand tools.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how he did it, but he changed major parts of the engine.
Yeah, we were in Utah. He took the whole engine apart, put the heads into a shopping cart, walked them down to a machine shop, had them resurfaced, brought them back, installed them.
Damn.
Like, did the same thing. I think the drive shaft snapped. He did the same thing. All with hand
This
tools.
is all pre-internet, pre-internet, pre-cell phones. So it's like, oh, we're broken down, and you just start walking along the highway. Like, okay, let's walk to the next exit and get help. That's what you would do, But yeah, that tour took us just about to every major city in the United States. We did it. We booked it ourselves through Book Your Own Fucking Life. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? We used Book Your Own Fucking Life, and that's when we really met a lot of great bands on that tour and made a lot of incredible connections. We even met on that tour. We met Anti-Flag on that tour, which we remain friends with to this day. We already knew Les and Jake, but we played some shows with them on that tour as well. And it was just like a really great time for touring and for punk rock and ska in general.
Destroy What Destroys You is released before you leave.
Yes.
And do people know who you are outside of Florida?
Yes, there were, people knew who we were, and I guess it was from Maximum Rock and Roll was really popular back then. And people did a lot of ordering.
They were buying our first 7-inch, and we made cassettes for Destroy What Destroys You. So those are kind of easy to mail out. People were buying those.
So Maximum Rock and Roll gave you good reviews, I take it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a few interviews with them. And we had some ads in there. We would
we would put our tour dates in there and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting and cool that Maximum Rock and Roll had that kind of reach at that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah, that was like
the internet of the time. Like, I remember Joe and we would get the Maximum Rock and Roll, and we would sit in my bedroom and just go through like every page. And I mean, that's how we ended up meeting the Suicide Machines. Like, they had an ad in there like, "Hey, punk ska band from Detroit, send us your demo and we'll send you ours," or something like that.
Yeah.
And we ended up, that's how we
actually mailed them our first demo. I remember doing that with the Bouncing Souls. They had a little in the classifieds in the back, like, "Hey, send us your demo, we'll send you our," we traded information that way.
Yeah, like a year later, Suicide Machines were playing in Miami Beach, and in between their songs, we were yelling out titles of their songs. "Play this, play that." And afterwards, they were like, "How the hell do you know these songs?" We were like, "Oh, you sent us the demo." And they were like, "Oh, that's you guys." Yeah.
When you went out, there was a demand for your record, and they weren't hitting stores. Is this on the first tour? Or is this later on?
That is first and second, I believe.
So people know your band. They know the album. They're wanting it in the record stores, but Far Out isn't able to keep up with orders. Is that kind of how you describe it?
Yeah, definitely. He ended up closing his record store, and we would just go to every time we went on tour. He would load our trailer or our van with like records, and we would go to every record store along the way, and he would go inside and sell our records there. But we would always hear the same thing when he would go in to sell the records. They were like, "Oh, we were trying to get this. We can't. What distributor has this? We can't find any distributors that have this." So, Joe and I would look at each other and we're like, "Well, this is a problem, like what these record stores want our record, but they can't get it, And it was just because, he just wasn't on top of, trying to get it out there."
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we met, at one point during that tour, we might've stopped at, was it Rots Records?
Yeah.
That was in like the Chicago area. They were a distributor, and we had talked to them and tried to get it distributed through them. And then, which leads us to, I guess we did have some people, a lot of labels were actually asking about us, but we didn't really, we weren't getting the message, like labels like Epitaph and Fat Records, BYO, a lot of bands, a lot of labels were interested in us.
Because we were on, the horn player, Tim Farout, he had his own record label, and he didn't want us to do anything on anybody else's label. So when people would come and ask, like, "Hey, can you want to do an album? You want to do a song, a 7-inch?" We would never hear that. He would just tell them, "No, we're not going to do anything on your label. We're going to stay on Far Out." And like, it wasn't for like years later. I remember I was at Lewis, the owner for Hopeless. I was at his house. He was having a barbecue, and I think it was Mark from BYO came over, and we were just talking, and I said, "Oh man," he said, "You should have done something on BYO," and I was like, "Oh, that would have been a dream come true, man. I love BYO, and we definitely would have done something with BYO." And he's like, "Oh, well, we asked. We wanted you to do something. Why didn't you should have done it?" We were like, "Well, you never asked." He was like, "No, I talked to Tim, and I called the record store, and he kind of laughed at me and said that we were not leaving Far Out." And that was just something we had never heard. I was like, what? Like, I've never even heard that. So then we started realizing that maybe that happened many more times than we'd like to know about.
How long did Tim stay in the band?
What was he in? For like about a year?
Okay.
Something like that, Joe? Not long.
Yeah, well, we did our second tour, I believe, with him. That's when Spike joined in.
Right.
After our first tour, our drummer was no longer with us, so we were getting ready to go on tour, and we had nobody.
Yeah, it was crazy. My current band at the time, Radio Baghdad, I was over in Europe for 5 weeks doing a tour. I came back and I recorded the Hudson record, and then Jason Morgan from Hudson was like, "Hey man, these guys need a drummer. You know, are you interested?" And I'm like, "Fuck!" All I wanted to do was tour. You know, so I'm like, "Sure." You know, I think I'm gonna practice with you guys 3-4 times, if that, and then we just hit the road for another 6 weeks. And I think that was Tim Farout's last tour.
That was his last tour.
I think after that he kind of split up or whatever happened after that.
And on that tour is when we played in Corona at the Showcase Theater, I believe it was. And Louis Posen from Hopeless Records came out with, I forget his name. Darren, yeah. They came out to the show and they were showing a lot of interest in our band, and they really wanted us on there. And we had met the Falling Sickness guys.
Yeah.
You guys heard of Falling Sickness, great band from California. And they were telling us like, "Hey man, you know, join the family, you know, why don't you do a record with us?" And we're really into the idea.
Who else played that show at the showcase?
Man, that's a good question.
Final Conflict.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Final
I think it was.
Conflict.
Yeah.
I just remember there was like some punk girl. Like as soon as we pulled out the horns on stage, there was some like punk girl with an ass flap that started screaming at us.
What was she yelling?
Just like, "Get the fuck off the stage. You guys aren't punk. This is a punk show." You know?
Which goes back to what I was saying. You know, we were too punk for the ska people, too ska for the punks. You know.
Yeah, I'm really curious about this period between Destroys You and All Fall Down. So punk rock and ska are both kind of having a rise both in the underground and the mainstream. So how is that impacting? What is it like for you guys out there?
You know, it just goes back to the same thing Joe was saying. Like we felt like we didn't get like a lot of respect in the ska community because they thought that we were just too punk. We weren't singing goofy songs.
We weren't poppy.
Yeah,
you know,
and we weren't singing about you know just goofy stuff. And then like the stuff that happened with Final Conflict, the girl with the ass flap. It's like she saw horns and automatically she had never heard of our band or anything. She didn't know what we were about. She
judged us,
and she just started screaming at us and yelling at us, and you know, just because we had horns on stage. So it's just kind of like one of those things. Which
I will say that kind of worked to our advantage in a way because we got to tour with some incredible bands, meaning on a big spectrum. You know, we toured, we did a major US tour with GBH and the band Conflict, which they're punk as fuck, right?
7 Seconds.
And 7 Seconds. And then we equally
the Vandals.
Yeah,
Vandals.
A lot of punk bands. And then we equally did we did tours with Les and Jake, Real Big Fish, you know, and we could just kind of fit our way with all kinds of bands, you know.
Did you feel like, whether you were playing with a punk band or a ska band, that it was like maybe the whole crowd wasn't into you, but there was a certain amount that were very into you, that you were like winning over like that certain percentage of crowd?
Yeah. We would totally get people come up to us afterwards and say, like, you guys turned us on to punk. Like we were listening to ska and stuff, but now we're listening to, the Dead Kennedys and vice versa. Punks were listening to ska.
So Hopeless reaches out to you. Are you interested right away, or are you apprehensive at all?
A little apprehensive,
What causes the apprehension?
It's just working with people that you don't really know. Like we knew them from going to shows. Like every time we'd play California, they would come out and they would kind of travel and go along to a few different shows. And at that time, Tim Farout was still in the band, so he wanted to put out our next record. but he couldn't keep up with our last record, so we were like, we can't do another record where people just can't get it, so.
Yeah, I mean, Hopeless is a pretty significant label at that point.
Yeah, we never had problems with distribution with Hopeless. They could get our records out.
Yeah. And of course our, one of my favorite bands was on that label, Mustard Plug.
Yeah.
Which they're great guys, and so it just felt like a good fit for us at the time.
Yeah.
So did you record that record at the same spot, the Tapeworm, or did you record somewhere else?
No. All Fall Down is the album that we did next after Destroy. We did All Fall Down. We went to West Beach Recorders. Yeah.
Donald Cameron.
We were talking about that.
Was that did that feel like a big step up for you guys?
Oh, definitely. That was crazy. That was like, we actually loaded everything into our van and drove from Miami all the way out to Hollywood to record the album.
Wow.
So it was kind of cool.
Where did you guys stay while you were recording?
We stayed at this, there was like a hotel around the corner, so we could walk right to the studio. And, it was, it was quite a thing. I remember like sitting in the pool at night, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm in Hollywood recording an album, and I'm in a pool.
Yeah.
I'm in a pool. Like, what?
Yeah. We just came out of a hurricane and we're like, oh man, we're like living large right now.
How many days was that recording session?
Maybe 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah. It took a while. There was a few days that we took a day off because of issues, and we had. I'll say this, that it was just an honor to be able to record with Donald Cameron, and all the bands that came out of West Beach Recorders, and for us to be able to experience that was incredible for us. Being young kids.
What were some of those bands?
Oh, a lot of bands. I mean, he recorded all the Bad Religion stuff, the early Bad Religion stuff.
Yeah.
He did, Rancid, I think Sublime. I mean, a lot of different bands.
Yeah.
Especially during that era.
Yeah, that whole early California punk sound, man, that's him.
Attributed to him, yeah.
So what were the issues that made it so you guys had to take days off from recording? Or can you not talk about it?
Yeah, I don't think,
No, yeah, we're not gonna say bad things about anybody, but like everything, you have your trials and tribulations, and we got through them. Some people were struggling with substance abuse, and so we had to take a few days off, and we got the job done, and we were really happy with the end product. We never got to record an album of that caliber, and I think to this day, it really, for a lot of people, that's our first album.
Yeah.
They've never heard Destroy What Destroys You. You can't really, if you don't own a copy or listen to it on YouTube, they don't really know it exists.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good first album for Hopeless Records.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about, so there's the title song, All Fall Down. Can you tell me a little about the inspiration behind that?
It was just about watching what was going on with the world at the time, with all the pollution and just the fight against that. Like if you brought up, trying to, it still happens today.
Still happening.
Yeah, if you bring up like, hey, maybe we should take care of the atmosphere. Maybe we should think about, treating each other with respect. And, it's still valid. To those points are still valid today, man. Just people fight back on that, it's weird.
The song feels like obviously angry, but it feels like there's some amount of hope to it. Do you feel like that's accurate?
Definitely. I mean, we're definitely angry young kids at the time that were, speaking our mind and stuff. But, the scene was a positive scene. It was about always creating something and building something new and moving forward. So, I hope that, a lot, people got that.
For a while or during this period, you used a logo, the AAA, that was basically, the American Automobile Association logo.
Right.
And they reached out to you and told you to stop.
Well, it was similar to their logo.
Yeah. We had a line that went through the entire logo.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
across all the A's. So we
And at that time, their middle A was offset
Yeah.
from the other A's. It wasn't like straight across how they have it now. So I would say that they copied us. Okay.
that's right.
But, that's for another court appearance, I believe.
That's a different podcast.
So what happened? Did you get a letter in the mail? What happened?
Yeah, we got a letter like sent to I think they sent it to Hopeless, like a cease and desist and and all of that. They wanted us to destroy copies that had it still on there. All of, yeah, it was a pain in the butt. We wanted to fight them in court, but we didn't have the money, and Hopeless wasn't willing to help us out with it.
So yeah, so if you own a copy of All Fall Down with the logo, with the AAA logo on it, that's the first pressing of it.
Yeah.
And after that, they started pressing it without the 3 A's.
Mm-hmm. It just said against all authority.
We still tagged it everywhere.
That's so strange. I know that happened a lot in that time period, but I just wonder.
Yeah.
A, I wonder how they found out about it, and B, why they even cared.
Well, we have a pretty good idea how they found out about it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
A disgruntled band member. I think we heard later on from friends in the scene that maybe a disgruntled band member had something to do with that.
Yeah, we can't prove it, so we're not going to say it, but that's how we feel about it.
But they brought it to their attention.
People brought it to our attention that somebody brought it to their attention. So
Yeah, because why would
allegedly.
Yeah, why would a corporation like that? What the fuck? They're not going to punk rock shows.
Yeah.
Unless one of their kids went to a show and came home with a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Could happen? Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of theories. If you have any theories, please share it with us. Please write to In Defense of Ska and send your comments.
Well, I remember we asked them why do you? Yeah, we were like, why do you even care though? Why do you even care about this? And I think their lawyer said that we were trying to sell albums using the name, using that logo made people. It was confusing people.
How to change a tire with a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, and I was like, what? Do you think people think that you guys came out with this album? We're trying to sell albums, we're people are buying it going, oh, wait, I thought this was the American Automobile Association album. What the hell is this? This is horrible. Punk-ska? Shit. Yeah.
Corrupting their kids.
If anything, you're probably reminding people to get AAA service for when they hit the road.
Yeah, man. Exactly. We were advertising, free advertising.
They should have been paying us.
Well, we did have, we toured out to California one time. We had a friend named Tang who was working at Epitaph Records, and we had broken down, again, one of the many times we broke down, and we were staying at his house, and I guess his uncle had a printing machine that made ginormous stickers.
Vinyl stickers.
Yeah, and he made a giant AAA symbol that we had stuck to the van. It was incredible. Like, it looked really cool.
There was two on the driver's and passenger side door, and then one huge one on the back of the door.
Yeah, and it was like, we thought we were like, damn, that's the shit, right? We thought we were cool as fuck. And I remember pulling into a truck stop once, and like these truckers like, oh, y'all boys working tonight? They thought we were like, they thought we were like legit American Automobile Association.
Oh, I thought they were asking you if you were working because they wanted to.
They're trying to get it.
Have some fun.
Oh, they thought I was a lot lizard.
They thought that's going on. That's what I thought they were on.
I don't know, man. Who knows? You gotta please be careful at the truck stops when you go there.
Yeah. I just remember you came back with $5. I was like, where'd you get that?
Nah, that didn't happen.
So this was probably you guys' peak in terms of popularity, would you say, as a band? Were you guys headlining tours at this point?
Yeah, at that point. All Fall Down and 24 Hour, like with the next album too. Yeah.
So, yes, so 24 Hour Road Assistance is the next album, and obviously that's a jab at the AAA, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Could be.
Thinking about it.
You guys never probably thought about that before.
Yeah, allegedly.
24-hour roadside resistance. Yeah, that sounds like it. That one was the follow up, and we did have what was cool, and now I'm gonna like go back to All Fall Down before we move on to this one. We got to work with some incredible artists for All Fall Down, and we had Omar Angulo do the front cover again, which he did the prior records. But then for the back cover, we had Jesse Michaels from Operation Ivy did the back cover.
Nice.
On that, and as well, and what other part, Danny, on the inside of the record, right? What do you call the circle?
The label.
Like, yeah, the label on the record, you know, the round part with the hole in it. Jesse Michaels drew something really cool on that as well.
We ended up putting that on the CD. When you pick up the CD, it's underneath the CD.
Yeah, so check that artwork out when you buy your All Fall Down record. And then after that, we worked with Omar Angulo again. He did the front cover, which depicts the AAA symbol with the businessmen standing in front of it, right? And on the back, we had John Yates did the cover, who worked with bands like the Dead Kennedys and so forth, and has done some great artwork like Officer. You ever seen the Officer Friendly with the cop, you know, with the baton, looking all scary and stuff.
Yeah.
So he did the back cover for us, and he helped us brainstorm that title, and it was just pretty genius, you know.
So ska is starting to lose popularity to some degree in the late 90s, early 2000s. You guys are in a weird position with ska already. So how does that impact you? Does that impact you in a negative way, or does it not really impact you at all?
Well, if you listen to that record, there's a lot less horns on that record.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more straight up punk rock songs. And I think that it wasn't so much that there was no offense to ska. I know this is in defense to ska, but no offense to ska. I think it was more so that we were frustrated with our horn players.
Yeah.
Because it was difficult to find members to play in the band that felt the way me and Danny felt about the band. We had a lot of horn players just like, hey, the tour's next week, I can't make it, but I found this guy that's just gonna play horn with you. And we were kind of stuck in a rut, and we're like, fuck it, we'll take this guy, you know.
No, by guy he means kid, because these guys were like 16 years old, some of them, you know. We would have to get permission from their parents, we'd have to meet their parents, and it was like, so we were liable for these guys, you know.
It was a little bit difficult for us. So we're like, well, we need to have some songs that just are like straight up punk, because what happens when the horn players can't show up? You know, we need some material to play. And we actually did do a tour once as a 3-piece. We did a short run with the band H2O, and it was, if you ever caught us on that tour, you saw us as a 3-piece because we did not have any horn players on that tour. Is that right, Danny? We didn't have any horn players.
I don't remember that, but it could be. Yeah.
We had no horn. We must have played like up and down the East Coast with just as a 3-piece.
Okay. I don't even remember that.
Yeah. That was one of our rough patches in the past. But we kept it going.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were writing 24 Hour, you know, some of those songs that are on that album were supposed to have horns, but those guys just weren't showing up to practice, and they weren't writing songs. And when we got into the studio, I remember they were trying to write horn lines when we were in the studio. And I was like, no way, you know, like we wrote these songs, you know, 6 months ago. We wrote lyrics, wrote all this stuff ready to go. And now you're going to try to write a horn line, like, and then record it right away. Screw you, forget it. You know, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So that album, a lot of people, they'll talk about how it just kind of was a little bit different for us, you know, going from Destroy What Destroys You.
To me, that record has a just a darker vibe to it in general. Maybe because the horns aren't on there, but it's just the music just sounds darker, and I don't know.
Yeah, definitely more minor scale songs and stuff. But that was the first. That's Spikey's first album too that he played on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, no, before that.
So
No.
blame it on me.
Before that, didn't we do the 10-inch with
The Criminals?
The Criminals prior to that? Or was that after?
Wasn't that the same recording? We just split up the songs. I don't remember. It's all a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were you at, Danny? Like lyrically, what place were you in? You guys talk about it being a little darker sounding. Were you in a darker place lyrically too, or was it more kind of the similar place you'd been in?
Maybe a little bit darker because, when I was younger, I wasn't really paying too much attention to what was going on around me. But then as I got older and I was involved in the scene and writing lyrics and stuff, I started paying attention more to politics and what was going on in the world. And it was just, it was a dark place, with Bush and, we were at war and,
Was there stuff that got the more specific about stuff that was happening?
I would have to look at the song titles because.
Well, we also had Dubois did that record too, right?
Yes, that's right.
So he did the first with the Destroy What Destroys You, and then he came back with 24 Hour.
Jeremy Dubois started recording 24-hour Roadside Resistance.
Yeah.
And he recorded
that was the next one.
He recorded the whole album. Yeah. So we went back. That was a step away from West Beach Recorders. We wanted to do it here in South Florida, because it was a lot to trek across the US and do it over there. So we kind of did it here on our own terms in a place that we were more comfortable.
Yeah.
And at that time, Jeremy Dubois was no longer in Tapeworm Studios. There was a more,
the Dungeon.
The Dungeon was the new studio that was like a step up, and that's where we did 24-hour Roadside Resistance.
Yeah, they had all new equipment and it was stuff. But yeah, back to the songs. Like the next song. That was definitely something that we saw every day, like playing shows, when you're on the stage. We had there was a big skinhead problem at the time, and you would just watch it. You could count on it. It was going to happen at every show. There was going to be some fights, and it seemed like it was always the same. You're a different town, but it's the same person. They're kind of, sit back, look around, and it's almost like they just pick out the weakest person and jump on that person just so that they can have some bragging rights after the show. They can sit back and talk with their friends about how they kicked somebody's ass or something, And so, we always tried to confront that at our shows. We wouldn't allow, if you were going to fight, we were going to make a spectacle out of you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And, everybody was going to make you leave. But, sometimes that would happen. We'd make the people leave. And then the person that was this, maybe not as strong as that person.
The Dungeon.
The gun that was a little bit weaker than that guy. He would step up, and then now all of a sudden he was the tough guy in the crowd. So that was kind of like the song about that. And then also that Source of Strontium 90 song was about, we grew up, Joe and I grew up in the shadow of Turkey Point nuclear power plant. And it was just kind of a song about some of the stuff that was going on with that nuclear power at the time.
So Adam used to be in the band Link 80, and we were talking before the episode that you guys and Link 80,
we were always booked on shows together, but then you guys wouldn't make it to the show, and I started to wonder if you guys didn't like us.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, I'm gonna make you feel bad because we're misfits of ska friends. We were both on the compilation together.
Yeah.
So we're friends. And we did play with you, I believe, at the Nile Theater one time.
Yep.
What year was that? Because I joined in '98, so it might have been.
Oh, maybe it was after that.
And we played somewhere else too with Link 80 too. Because I remember the band, everybody was on Danielle Steele's big camper bus.
Yeah, so that was before I was in the band. They had
They had like an RV, right?
Yeah. And they had like a handler for Nick, like driving the van around.
Yeah. Right.
No,
right.
nobody in the band knew, but that was actually like a psychiatrist.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's good.
Well, I will tell you this, Adam. You guys were huge in the UK.
Oh my God.
Like, no matter where we were, people were talking about Link. And at first, I'll tell you what, I didn't even know that they were saying Link 80. I thought there was a band over there called Link AE. And they were like, "Oh, you should have been Link AE, Link AE." And I'm like, "Oh, shit, Link AE. Who's that?" And and they were like, "Oh, you don't know Link AE?" And I was like, "No, man." And
you guys made a big impact there because you had just toured there, I believe. I don't know if you were in the band at the time or not.
Yeah. I did all the touring over there.
We toured with Cap Down over in England, and that's all they would talk about.
They loved
Link IE and Slow Gook. And,
yeah.
were the two. That's all we heard.
Yeah, man. I mean, really good bands too. Really good guys. And yeah, it's weird that we never really toured with you guys or did like a long stretch,
Yeah. I would always look at our itinerary and I'd be like, "Oh, cool. We're going to see Against All Authority." And then something would happen and you guys would have to drop off the show. And then later I heard about your bus breaking down.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, maybe they're," and then so years later I was like, maybe their bus broke down. But I remember telling Brent once, I was like, he was talking to one of you guys and I was like, ask if they like Link 80.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, we're just, I guess the forces were against us from playing,
Yeah, there's some kind of
same thing. I mean, we never played with Mustard Plug either when I was in the
we
band.
always had vehicle problems. And I think it's some kind of bad karma with the American Automobile Association.
It could be that someone did a.
Well, did you guys ever have AAA like coverage?
No. I mean, maybe through my cell phone or something. Okay.
Well, so was it a thing like out of principle you weren't going to have AAA?
Yes. Like
everybody burn your AAA card.
That's right.
Wasn't there? Okay, am I tripping, or was there another ska punk band just called AAA?
No, I saw that too somewhere. Like I remember seeing that on a flyer. And I think it was in like San Francisco or somewhere. Like I remember it just said AAA, and we were like, "What the hell is that?"
Well, that I don't know how, but I do know why. But people they refer to us as AAA all the time, and yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, I'm pretty sure I saw that before on flyers and was like, "Oh, cool, Against All Authority," and then it wasn't Against All Authority, and I was like, "What?"
They were imposters.
Yeah.
Where are they now? Not on this podcast.
I want to ask about. So Danny told me about this show in the 2000s where you guys played in like Houston at like a Mexican restaurant. And there was a hardcore band called Evergreen Terrace that played across the street. Do you know the story I'm talking about, Danny?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you pick up the story, and then if anyone else has anything to add, please do.
Okay, so yeah, it was this old. It looked like it used to be like a Mexican restaurant, but they had turned it into a venue. It's a really cool little spot. But right across the street, I mean, directly across the street, there was another club, and we were playing. We were playing our show, but Evergreen Terrace was a band I had never heard of. They were a hardcore band. They were playing right across the street, and everybody was there to see them. They had a line that went all the way down the street, and there was like, I don't know, maybe 30 people at our show. So and I remember we were standing outside, and one of the girls that was in the line, she yelled across the street. She was like, "Hey, who's playing over there?" And one of the kids yelled back, "Oh, Against All Authority." And she yelled back. She's like, "Oh, what are you guys in junior high?" like said something like that. It was really,
I don't remember
that.
So this was like what, 2002, 2003, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this was like at that point when people were kind of hating on ska.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you went over across the street to check out the band, and you saw them in the parking lot?
Oh yeah. That's but like I didn't even go across the street. I was just kind of like hanging out outside of the show, and but I just remember before they went on, they all went outside and they grabbed some weights, and they were outside like pumping iron, in the parking lot, and I was like, oh man, what's going on? Like,
damn, is that what we have to do to get people at our show?
Yeah, Exactly. We went and bought some weights.
I've got a thigh master I can bring.
Yeah.
Where was that? In Texas, right?
Yeah, I believe that was Texas.
So you guys don't remember the weightlifting hardcore band that played across the street and stole your audience?
Yeah.
I mean, Misfits used to do that. Misfits would bring a weight bench on tour.
Henry Rollins does it. A lot of guys do it.
Yeah, we played with Henry Rollins in Florida, and he had a trailer that had a solo flex in there, and he was in there doing his thing.
Yeah, no lie.
Yeah.
Was it Rollins band or was it just Rollins?
It was Rollins band, but they were playing Black Flag, and Keith Morris actually came out and sang the first half of the set, and then Henry Rollins finished it up.
Yeah, that was a cool show.
It was a benefit for the West Memphis 3.
Oh yeah, I remember when that was happening.
Yeah, really cool.
So in like 2005, you guys opened for Real Big Fish on tour.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Less Than Jake. That was
Was it 2000? I think that was in 06 or 07.
Okay,
probably.
How did the Real Big Fish crowd react to you guys?
It was weird, like
sure.
I think I know the first part of the tour, not a lot of people even got to see us. The managers of the tour managers on their side got together and kind of had us. They moved our set time back. So if doors were at 8:00, like our stage time was 8:00.
Oh, geez.
So a lot of times, by the time like our fans got into the club, we were done playing. So our fans were like pissed off about it.
Yeah, and I remember that. Then we realized that it was the people on the tour were great. We made a lot of friends on that tour. Less Than Jake, they've always had our back. They always vouched for us, and they got us on that tour. And then they were co-headlining with Real Big Fish, and Real Big Fish, I guess they were affiliated with Streetlight Manifesto, and then we realized we would go on stage, and our sound was horrible, and we didn't bring a sound guy with us. We're just, regular punk band here. We weren't at that stage, where we brought a sound engineer with us. And then as soon as we were done, the place would fill up and Streetlight would go on, and they just sounded incredible. It's like they put the faders up and shit, and the sound was great. And then we realized that the sound guy for Real Big Fish was also the sound guy for Streetlight, and they were being managed by the same guy. And they were building up Streetlight, to kind of take over the spot for Real Big. I guess the manager was kind of grooming them, and it was a difficult tour for us because, again, we broke down, I think, in Metropolis. Remember, we broke down in a town named Metropolis.
The first night, the first show, our van caught on fire.
We were driving, and the whoever was driving the van was like, "I smell smoke," and then it was like, "Oh shit, there's a fire in the van," and we had to pull over. And we had to like put it out. I actually brought a fire extinguisher. I don't know why, but I brought one, and it was underneath the seat. We put out the fire. We made it to the show somehow. And we just had a difficult tour because then it's like, how do you start a tour without a van? You know what I mean? And the van that we thought we had was now no longer functioning. So it was difficult for us to get to the next show. And, but I remember, I think back to the question was, that was the tour where we really stood apart from a lot of the bands.
Sure, yeah.
And a lot of kids were coming up to our merch booth, because that's one thing we're notorious for, is we always hung out at the merch booth and we always talked to the fans and engaged people. We really weren't so much like hang out in the dressing room kind of rock stars, you know what I mean? So we were out with the people, and a lot of kids would come up to us and say, "Man, that was incredible. I really never heard a band like that was like really punk but ska at the same time," So, and on that tour, we were obviously playing more of our ska influenced songs. We were able to kind of go to we were like chameleons like that. Oh, this tour is with a punk band, so played a lot of our hard songs, you know, or this band is ska, so let's play more of our ska stuff, you know. I think we did influence a lot of kids on that tour, and as always, I always thank Les and Jake for taking us on these tours. Those are great guys.
You guys end up breaking up like a couple of years after that. Now it's my understanding that one of the reasons that led to that was just an inability to keep the lineup together and having to cancel shows because of it.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to be in a punk band as your main career, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, and life happens. You know, we have families and so forth.
Yeah, that's when I left the band. And I left the band earlier than that. It was probably 2001, because my wife at the time got pregnant. And I'm like, well, I can't have roommates all my life. You know what I mean? So that's when I kind of branched off.
Yeah. You know, I'm dealing with, I have a rare disease called Marfan syndrome. And, you know, I have to really watch myself.
Can I ask a little bit about what it is?
Marfan syndrome is a genetic disorder, and it affects your connective tissue in your body. One of the main things that it does is that you have a lot of cardiovascular issues. I have an aortic aneurysm, but it's always being watched, and I'm doing really good, and I'm pretty healthy right now. So, you know, that kind of gave me some time to really deal with my health issues and kind of get myself checked out, and I'm under control now. But thank you for asking. I want, you know, I think it's one of those invisible diseases that people don't realize you have. And, you know, it's difficult having an invisible disability sometimes.
Yeah. So you mainly manage it through diet and exercise and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm on medications, and, you know, I take good care of myself. I don't fucking party anymore like I used to. And yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready to rock again, that's for sure.
Yeah, being a touring punk rock musician, probably, not a great lifestyle to manage a disease like that.
Yeah, I remember, you know, when we toured with GBH, you know, and we're like, man, how old are these fucking guys? And they're still doing it, and it's just like, my hat's off. My hat goes.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago, and they're still doing it.
Hats
to this day, man. Those guys never stop.
Hats off to them.
Road warriors.
Hats off to them, you know. But yeah, it kind of just fizzled out, you know. I think that it
just got harder to stay on the road too. Like there's one thing that's kind of hard to talk about, but you know, we were on tour with Anti-Flag at the time, and we were having van problems, you know, like our van broke down, and we just, you know, we could never get ahead of that. We never had enough money to get ourselves a new van and to invest into that kind of stuff. So we were just always dealing with breakdowns. And when we were on the tour with Anti-Flag, there was a band called The Code, and they had this van and trailer that they were going to sell to us because they were getting a new van and trailer. So we had this deal with Hopeless, you know, we were like, hey, you know, can we get some tour support? We don't have a van. We were supposed to go on tour, and we don't have a van, but they're going to sell us this. They've agreed to sell us this van and trailer. So, you know, we ended up getting the van and trailer, and the deal was that we were going to go out to California. When we got out there, Lewis from Hopeless was going to cut us a check, and we were going to, you know, have this van. But it turned out, you know,
well, it was going to come out of our royalties, I think. And, you know, we could never really get ahead. And also the issue with the rotating members. Me and Danny have been in the band since day one. And we've had a lot of different members in the band. We always had to teach a new drummer or a new horn player. And it got hard, and
yeah, it was just hard to keep. It was hard to keep it together. And then with the financial thing, you know, when we were on tour, they Hopeless wanted to. They said, okay, yeah, you know, we're going to buy the van, and you guys can pay it back with, you know, with your royalties. And when we got out there, I kind of felt cornered. Like we had to, they said the only way they would give us the money was if we were to sign our rights away for the royalties to the song. But we were 3,000 miles away from home, and the band that we bought the van from was sitting in the parking lot waiting for us to come outside with a check. So we were backed into a corner, and so we had to sign our rights away to the song, and it was just to the like everything that we had done with Hopeless until our debt was paid off with them. So we kind of felt, I felt stabbed in the back by that. And on top of that, that just took away our means of support. Like when we were touring, we could make money out on the road, but then when we would come home for 4 months or 6 months or whatever it was, we relied on the royalty check to pay our rent, while we weren't touring. And when you took that away from us, like that took the ability to keep things going for us. We didn't have that income. So
it's already like tight enough as is, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So when we don't have that to tide us through to the next tour, we have to get jobs. We have to figure something out. So
that's a raw deal too. I mean, not getting anything from album sales.
Yeah. I mean, now, it's all, the debt's paid off now. So, but.
Oh, it was just until the debt was paid off?
Yeah, it was because, whenever an advertisement gets taken out, or, you're paying for recording, or, if you get a box of CDs to sell at your show, like all that, goes on your account, and you got to pay all that all back.
Yeah, and that was also during the time that Hopeless was kind of pivoting and having, they had bands like Avenged Sevenfold and Thrice, and they were focusing more on those bands, and we were kind of like old news to them, so they didn't really give a shit about us anymore. And I remember we did that tour with Anti-Flag, and out of nowhere they were like, oh, and Thrice is on this tour too. And no offense to Thrice, because they were very nice guys, but we would get to the club and the whole venue would be plastered with Thrice posters from our label, and there was nothing about Against All Authority on there. And we're like, wow, you can't help us with a van, you don't even want to put a flyer up for us, we're like, old news to you guys, fuck you, you know what I mean? It's kind of how we felt.
Yeah.
So this show that you guys are playing at Fest, this is your first show in 15 years?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Pretty much.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about what led to this show.
Well, I've had promoters, like Jim Hayward was a promoter down in South Florida. He's been, and multiple promoters over the years were like, hey man, any chance AAA can get back together? I'm like, and I lost contact with Danny for a while. I was always in contact with Joe because we were still in bands, separate bands down there. And he's like, I'm down. And then, me and Joe were talking. And then one day Danny was like, hey, what would it take, for us to do a show, and maybe like every other month, just do these random like festivals or whatever it may be. And that's kind of how it came to fruition.
Yeah. Also, I think also more so with the mention of I think what sparked it was the mention of the punk rock museum, I believe. Isn't that right, Danny?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vinny from Less Than Jake is kind of curating the 90s section of that punk rock museum, and he asked us to be a part of it. So I kind of reached out to everybody, and I was like, hey, do you have anything you want to donate to the museum? And we all started just talking about it. And, Joe and I were talking, and I said, the only way I would do it is if we got like the original, members are not the first original, but, real members. I don't want to find new people to play this. And, Spikey would have to be on board. And then, I remember I got a message from Spikey on Facebook, and he was just like, dude, those were the best times of my life. And I was like, well, shit, maybe this is it. Maybe we should do this. So yeah, we just started talking about doing it. And lo and behold, man, we found this, we're all in different parts of the country. We're like, I'm in Gainesville, Joe's down in Miami, and Spikey's way over in, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And Who found that app? Was that LP?
Yeah, say the name of the app again.
It's called Jam Kazam. So I work at Sweetwater Sound. I've been there for up here for 8 years. And right when the pandemic hit, we were working from home. So all my customers were like, yeah, man, because nobody was getting together. So they're like, I'm using this app, Jam Kazam. I'm like, man, I would never use that crap. Like jam with, I got to be in the same room as somebody, right? And then sure enough, this came up and I'm like, dude, I know this app we can get. It's like $10 a month. We can actually jam, from all over the world. You can jam with anybody. So I sent out these guys, the little Scarlett interfaces and some headphones and a mic. And sure enough, we've been doing it. First couple times was weird, not being in the same room, not making eye contact, but after like a month or two of doing it, it's just like the new normal now.
The Punk Rock Museum, by the way, just a little aside. This is going to be in Las Vegas, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's Vinny. Vinny. It's not Vinny's project. He's just in charge of the 90s section.
Yeah, he's like heading up the 90s.
So what did you guys end up donating to the Punk Rock Museum?
I think that things got put on hold. Like the building was in construction when Vinny contacted us, and then the pandemic hit, and then prices of materials and everything went skyrocketing, and so it's still in the works, but I don't know what the end date is for it. So
all right, well, hopefully we'll see some Against All Authority in the museum when it does open.
Yeah, I think it's moved along, and I was like, when Danny called me, he's like, "Hey, would you donate anything?" And I'm like, "Well, fuck, just take my guitar and my amp. I'm not using them anyways, just put them in there." And also I build guitars, so I'm like, I'm not gonna play that. If I'm gonna rock out, I'm gonna play a fucking guitar that I built, so I'm gonna just donate my guitar that I played with, my Fender that I played in Against All Authority with, fuck it. And which was it's a hard decision because I love that guitar. And then that kind of got the wheels turning, and we're like, fuck, we need to like play a show, man. And then that ignited that spark ignited everything, and here we are. We're ready to play our first show in 15 years, and it's real exciting. I can't wait to get on stage with these guys. It's been a long time waiting.
That, and we wrote a bunch of new material.
Yeah, we've been writing new songs, so we're like ready to, and I don't know if you guys watch the news, but the political state now, I think we need Against All Authority again.
Sure.
We need to fuel the fire again.
Thank you so much for listening to In Defense of Ska. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you normally stream or download episodes. If you haven't already, grab a copy of my book, In Defense of Ska, available at clashbooks.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's at In Defense of Ska. And please consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/indefenseofska. You will get monthly bonus episodes, extended interviews and commentary per episode, and access to the In Defense of Ska Discord. In Defense of Ska would not be possible without the great team that tirelessly works on it every week. So you should go check out their other projects as well. Co-host Adam Davis has an amazing band called Omnigon. Give them a follow on Instagram and Twitter. It's simply at Omnigon. And our editor, Chris Reeves, has a phenomenal record label and podcast called Ska Punk International. For more information, go to skapunkinternational.com. And if you've ever enjoyed one of the highly specific In Defense of Ska memes floating around the interwebs, it was likely the work of The Bands I Like Only Charge $18. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And on that note, we leave you by saying, Ska now more than ever. So, this episode this week was with 3 members of Against All Authority.
Great ska punk band.
So we got to talk to them a little longer, and we saved that for our Patreon bonus episode.
One of the things we talked about was, are there new recordings that they're working on?
Yes, and
you might want to hear behind the curtain who potentially will be producing that record.
Yeah, it's a name you know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. There was also, Against All Authorities from Florida. So we tried to figure out if Oscar Isaac, famed actor Oscar Isaac, and former ska musician, was an Against All Authority, or shall we say, is an Against All Authority fan.
Star Wars, Dune, ska.
So we had a pretty interesting forensic discussion about that. You're going to want to listen and see, look at the evidence and make your own conclusion about it.
Sign up for the Patreon. It's only $5, $6.90 if you want to make us giggle. And we look forward to seeing you behind the curtain.
So who do we have next week? Who's our guest next week?
Next week we have Chris from the Flatliners.
Nice. Yeah. That's a good episode.
Did I get that right?
Chris Creswell.
Chris Creswell. Can't remember his last name. Sorry, Chris.
Okay. But he's in Flatliners.
Yes. Talking about their ska record.
Ska record.
So you're going to want to hear that.
Speaking of ska now more than ever.
More than ever.
More
Bye.
than ever.